There was a time when the world was full of hidden meanings. Trees whispered secrets, rivers had spirits, dreams came loaded with messages. Heaven and earth were a living conversation between the visible and the invisible. It was an enchanted world. People didn't just live to produce, they lived to belong to the mystery. They celebrated harvests with rituals. They looked to the sky with reverence, and they knew there was something greater that could not be explained, only felt. But Max Weber warned, this world is disappearing, and the name he gave it was brutal, the disenchantment of the world. According to Weber, modernity has killed mystery. It has taken the sacred away from simple things. It has exchanged enchantment for reason. It has exchanged the soul of the day for efficiency. Science explained everything. Technology filled everything. Calculation overcame symbols. And what was once magical became functional. Today, you look at a sunrise and open your camera. You feel an ache in your soul and research an article. You want to understand why you feel empty and make an appointment. But nothing seems to fill you. Why? Because the modern world works very well, but it doesn't excite. It doesn't inspire. It doesn't invite you to dive into the invisible. And Weber knew, the problem with modernity is not organization. It is that it has cleared away all mystery, as if that were progress. You live in a time when everything needs to be logical. If it can't be measured, it's useless. If it can't be proven, it's mistrust. If it's not useful, it's disposable. And in this process, something was being lost inside you. You feel this when life seems too controlled. The answers do not touch the heart. The soul asks for silence, but the world only offers noise. Everything is right, but nothing makes sense. Weber would call this the price of disenchantment. You didn't just lose the world's magic, you lost yours too. But what if this isn't definitive? What if realizing this is the beginning of a recovery? Max Weber was not against reason. He was simply pointing out a brutal side effect of modern rationalization, the death of the invisible. When everything began to be explained, something began to be emptied. Love became chemistry, faith became superstition, the soul became disorder, and mystery became ignorance. What once touched the sacred today needs functionality. You no longer do something because you feel it. You do it because it makes sense. You don't give it to yourself because it's beautiful. You give it to yourself because it's useful, and when something doesn't have a clear logic, you give it up. Weber called this a disenchanted world, not because it has ceased to be magical, but because you have been taught not to see magic anymore. Modern rationality has taught that. Religion divides. The symbol is a waste of time. Silence is unproductive. Emotion is weakness, and that everything must have a practical purpose. But Weber knew, this kills the soul of culture. When the symbol dies, life becomes a number. When faith becomes a taboo, emptiness grows. When ritual becomes shame, human beings feel lost. You are surrounded by explanations, but you feel like nothing explains you. You know what's going on in the world, but you don't understand what's going on inside you. You have access to information, but not to wisdom. And this is the point that Weber wanted to make. The modern world gave you control and took away meaning. It gave you efficiency and took away mystery. It gave you productivity and robbed you of wonder. You can no longer get lost in something without reason. You can no longer feel without naming it. You can no longer stop without guilt. But maybe you still remember the feeling that there is something more, something that cannot be proven but can be felt. And maybe, deep down, that's why you're missing something, but you don't know what. Because what's missing is not more information, it's soul. Max Weber said that modernity killed the sacred, and it wasn't done violently, it was done in a hurry. In the past, people stopped. They stopped to give thanks before the harvest. They stopped to listen to nature. They stopped to celebrate a gesture, a time, a season. Everything was ritual. Everything had meaning. But in the modern world, stopping is almost a sin. Being silent feels weird. Doing something without a purpose seems irresponsible. You wake up and grab your cell phone. You eat lunch while answering emails. You go to sleep with your mind spinning. You live busy, but far from yourself. Weber called this disenchantment, not because the world is no longer special, but because you have lost the time and perspective that revealed the beauty of the world. Today, everything needs a practical reason. You don't read for pleasure. You read to develop. You don't walk for peace. You walk to achieve goals. You don't talk for connection. You talk to network. Even spirituality has become a product, transformed into a technique, reduced to an algorithm. Promising success, not silence. Promising control, not delivery. But the sacred does not follow a schedule. The sacred does not appear when you want it to. It appears when you allow yourself to stop. And the system doesn't want you to stop, because stopping makes you think, and thinking too much makes you wake up. That is why Weber saw rationalization as a danger. It does not destroy the divine by force. It merely replaces it with the useful. What was once a prayer became an agenda. What was once an intuition became a given. What was once time with God became unproductive time. But what you feel deep down, that longing for something that truly connects you, hasn't gone away. It's there, whispering. Even in the midst of the rush, Weber would say that the modern soul still searches, but now it searches in the dark. You feel tired, not just because you do too much, but because everything you do takes you away from what truly nourishes you. And maybe you don't even need to change everything right now. Maybe you just need one step. Stop again. Feel again. Listen again to the part of yourself that the world told you to silence, because the sacred never left the world. You were the one who was distracted until you forgot it. Max Weber used a powerful image to describe what the modern world was becoming. A machine, not in the literal sense, with gears and engines, but in the existential sense. A system so rational, so functional, so predictable, that it left aside everything that does not fit into a calculation. In the name of efficiency, we eliminate doubt, contemplation, mystery, and with that, we also eliminate the soul. You feel it. Every day is the same. You wake up, do tasks, answer messages, fulfill obligations, and repeat. Over and over. You have become an extension of the machine. Your mind operates like a spreadsheet. Your routine works like a treadmill. Your body responds like a command button. But the problem is simple. You are not a machine. You get tired. You feel. You need beauty, you need connection, you need a break, and that's where the crisis comes in. Because the modern world demands that you function, even when you're broken inside. It expects results, even when your soul cries out for help. Weber saw this clearly. Rationalization does not stop. It advances. It conquers. It organizes everything. But in the process, it eliminates everything that does not serve the system. And this includes faith that brings no profit, love that does not follow logic, free time that doesn't pay off, the silence that does not produce. You start to believe that stopping is a waste of time, that feeling is a luxury, that questioning is dangerous, and that living is just about continuing. But Weber knew this logic will devour you, because the machine doesn't make mistakes, and when you fail, you feel guilty, because the machine doesn't cry, and when you suffer, you feel weak, because the machine doesn't doubt, and when you wonder what you're doing with your life, you feel lost. But the truth is different. You're not wrong for not being able to keep up with this pace. You're just trying to live in a system that wasn't made for humans. The world has become a machine. But you are still human, and this can still be your salvation. Max Weber saw progress with two eyes. He recognized its achievements: science, medicine, technology, organization. All of these work better than ever. The modern world gives you control, but at the same time, he asked an uncomfortable question. Why then are we increasingly empty? What was lost along the way? Weber's answer was clear: the sense. You can measure everything, but you no longer know what moves you. You can predict everything, but you no longer feel the unexpected as a miracle. You can speed up everything, but you live as if nothing really touches you. This is the paradox of progress. You have more comfort, more access, more information, but less purpose, less connection, less soul. You look at your life and see achievements, but you feel absence. You feel like something is missing, even without knowing what it is. Weber called this the prison of instrumental reason, reason that serves only to resolve, never to reveal. It organizes the world, but does not fill it. It answers how, but does not answer why. That's why so many feel out of place, living in a hyper-connected world, but internally orphaned. You can have a good job, a good salary, a stable life. But if you never stop to ask yourself, what is all this for? You can spend years surviving without ever having truly lived. And this feeling is not weakness. It is an echo, a sign that your soul was not made to live only for function. You need what cannot be explained, of a presence that calms you without saying anything. Give me a moment that makes you cry for no reason, of a silence that connects you with something greater, of a faith that is not used to win, but to feel. Weber would never suggest abandoning progress, but he would warn you, if progress steals the mystery, it turns you into a zombie in a suit, and you weren't born for that. You were born with a thirst for transcendence. What you're missing is not evolution, it's enchantment. Max Weber knew, when logic dominates everything, the soul no longer has space, and it's not because it disappears. It's because it doesn't fit into the system. You realize this when you try to explain a feeling and it escapes you through words. When you look for meaning in formulas and find only function. When you feel that what you lack cannot be bought or measured. It is at this moment that the soul begins to get sick, silently, deeply. Weber called this the iron cage of modernity, a structure of rules, roles, and goals that organizes your life and imprisons your spirit. You are not being punished, you are being adjusted. Modern society doesn't yell at you, it shapes you with praise. You are so productive. You are never absent. You deliver everything correctly. And what seems like praise is just another way to keep you going, but you feel it. You feel something is dying inside, that the charm of the days is fading, that Sundays are silently sad, that the seconds pass, but do not touch. Weber wasn't just talking about society. He was talking about you, how you were trained to distrust what you cannot explain, how you distanced yourself from intuition, from the sacred, from the invisible, and even from God. Because the modern world doesn't stop you from believing. It just distracts you so much that you realize you're losing your faith. You have stopped praying, not because you reject prayer, but because you think you don't have time. You stopped looking at the sky, not because you were tired, but because you thought it was useless. You are not cold. You have been trained to appear strong, even when your soul cries out for beauty, mystery, connection. Max Weber would understand you, and he wouldn't tell you to fight the world. He would ask you just one thing. Recognize that you are inside a cage, and that it has no lock. The key is where it always was, in your decision to feel again. Max Weber never said that the world has lost its true magic. What he said was even more profound. You have been conditioned to no longer see magic. Disenchantment did not destroy the mystery. It only pushed it to places where you no longer look. To silence, to feeling, to the invisible. You have been trained to avoid everything you cannot control. But right there is where the healing resides. You keep looking for meaning in goals, titles, numbers, and answers. But the meaning you seek may lie in a silent conversation, a hug without haste, a moment that brings tears to your eyes for no reason, a prayer without asking for anything. Weber would warn you, the machine has won on the surface, but the soul has never ceased to exist. It is just buried beneath layers and layers of logic, productivity, and distraction. But it still pulses. You feel it on empty days, when everything is right, but nothing fills you. When you're surrounded, but miss something you've never seen. When you find yourself remembering your childhood, not the facts, but the intensity with which you felt it. This is the call. It is the soul saying, I'm still here. Disenchantment was a historical process, but re-enchantment is a personal choice. You don't have to reject science, but you can go back to listening to the sacred. You don't have to abandon logic, but you can make room for mystery. Magic is still in things, in the smell of the earth after the rain, in the look of someone who understands you without words, in the shiver when something touches you inside. And all of this is there, all around you. What Weber would do is remind you. You don't need to understand to believe, and you don't need to taste to feel. The machine won't stop, but you can slow it down. You can see again. You can re-enchant your world, one gesture at a time. Because life is not just logic. Life is encounter. It is transcendence. It is soul. And no machine will be able to give you that.